here. Comfreys, thank you. Staff, thank you very much. Lance, who do we have on WebEx?
We have
Very good. Thank you for that. First item of business, request for bill introductions. Mike, welcome to committee.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Mike O'Neill on behalf of Kansas Policy Institute requesting introduction of 24 RS 3384, a bill dealing with the Kansas Open Records Act, dealing with limitations on the amounts of expenses that can be charged.
Very good. Committee objections. Seeing none, bill is entered.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. Further bill introductions. The chairman has a bill introduction. The RS number is 3363. This bill is in regards to landowner rights and squatters. So committee objections. Seeing none, bill is entered. Further bill introductions. Seeing none, thank you. We'll open the meeting on House Bill 2808. Mike, give us an overview. Thank you.
Mike Heim with the Revisor Statutes Office. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, this bill creates a couple of new crimes. One is causing harm to a public transportation employee, and the second is aggravated causing harm to a public transportation employee. The causing harm crime would include spitting, throwing, otherwise transferring bodily fluids, and so on onto the transportation employee, throwing an object such as a brick, rock, and so on, or physically striking. And that would be a Class A person misdemeanor, which is up to $2,500 fine and up to 1 year in jail. Aggravated causing harm would be causing serious injury to a public transportation employee because of physical contact, brandishing a firearm or other weapon, and attempting to strangle an employee. It would be a level 7 person felony, which if you don't have a long criminal history record, it would be presumptive probation. Public transportation employee is defined as an employee or a contract employee of a transportation system, and a transportation system then is defined in statutes as well. If you've got questions, I'll try and answer them.
Committee questions of Mike. Representative Ruiz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mike, what age would be charged under this? At the beginning, what age would they be charged under this aggravated to a public transportation driver?
If you're a juvenile, you'd be charged under the Juvenile Offenders Code, and it would be, if you're under 18, you wouldn't be charged under this particular statute, if that's your question.
That was my question. Thank you.
Representative McNorton.
Thank you, Matt. Excuse me, Mr. Chair. Mike, do we have other bills on statute right now that cover this? Why are we thinking that it's just a transportation that we need?
Yes, probably. If you look at the battery statute, there's a number of different folks that are covered in that particular statute, aggravated battery and so on. You've got juvenile detention, state correction officers, judges, and so on. It's another example of a cutout of a specific group of people.
So if we keep, if we keep cutting out, do we make it so we have to have the laws so specific that we are gonna let people buy because we don't have that covered in statute somewhere?
Well, the cycle that goes is periodically there's a recodification of the criminal code where there's an attempt to bring all these different crimes together and have a crime that covers everything. And then as time goes on, you've got different groups that want a particular enhanced penalty or whatever for a crime and so on, or a specific statute. So, I mean, it's not out of the ordinary to have a special cutout for different folks.
Thank you. Thank you.
Committee, further questions of our revisor? Representative Burkamp.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And kind of similar, just following up on that, answered part of it. Is the penalty just more severe now than it would be otherwise, or is it the same as if the existing statutes were enforced?
Well, it depends. I mean, it depends on who you're striking or battering and so on. So there's different penalties.
Thank you.
Representative Bryce.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mike. I believe it was last year we had a bill that was maybe a similar assault on a medical healthcare worker in emergency rooms and so forth. And I believe, if my memory is right, that passed. So that would be maybe a parallel that Representative McNorton's talking about. Are there any other selected groups that have this special assault crime that you could say? Thank you.
Yes, I can make you a list and send it out to you.
That's fine. Thank you.
Committee, further questions? Representative Sanders.
Is the term for people who are in this cutout protected class? Would this make the transportation workers part of a protected class?
I'm not sure what you mean by protected class, but they would have a special crime. If you're going to charge someone for battering a transportation employee, you would have to charge him under this particular statute. So,
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Blue.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry for all the questions, Mike. So my question is, if I throw a brick at you right now, I'll never do that, by the way. But if I were to do that, would that be a Class A person misdemeanor? Or
under the general
just in general, just
battery, it would be or an assault battery, whatever. It would be covered in a different statute.
okay? Because my question is, it's still wrong. I'm just curious if this is just raising the penalty or so forth, or if I throw a brick at somebody on the middle of or on the street or at a public transportation employee, if it's the same criminal charge across the board.
Well, I think just a general battery is like a Class B misdemeanor. So, I mean, this would be a little higher crime for that.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Burkamp.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sorry, one last question. Would this cover public school bus drivers?
I'm sorry,
Would this cover public school bus drivers?
public.
So like if you're a school bus driver for our school system, since they receive federal money?
I think it would, but again, I would defer to someone that deals with the public transportation. I think it would cover bus driver.
Okay, thank you.
Committee, further questions? Seeing none, thank you, Mike. Very good. Next, we have Tuck Duncan, Kansas Public Transit Association. Tuck, welcome to committee.
I can sit down. No. I am Tuck Duncan. I am the executive director of the Kansas Public Transit Association. It's been my privilege to be such for 17 years. We wouldn't be here if the current law was working. I've attached to my testimony a recent letter from the American Public Transportation Association to the federal government, who has been dealing with this situation on a nationwide basis. In the bipartisan infrastructure law, there were specific directions to the FTA and definitions with respect to public transit. You might notice this definition of the type of activities that will give rise to the type of circumstance under which this bill is a little different. I mean, we have people that spit at bus drivers. We have people that throw fecal matter at bus drivers. We have people that throw all sorts of things at bus drivers. And bus drivers are particularly susceptible because guess what they're doing? They're driving people to and from in public. Now, we have special laws for assault and in this state for law enforcement persons. They deal with the public on a regular basis. We now have, as the representative indicated, a bill that was sponsored last year, was in the Transportation Committee. I tried to attach this onto that bill, but at that time, there was a desire to simply work towards protecting the healthcare officials who were dealing with people on a regular basis in emergency rooms who were experiencing the same sorts of activities. Yeah, we wouldn't be here if the current law was working. We need to heighten the attention of this activity so as to prevent this sort of activity from continuing to occur. Now, your next question would be, okay, Tuck, great. How many occurrences have there occurred in Kansas? Well, we don't have a central database yet. But that's what the Federal Transit Administration is developing, and that's what that letter that's attached is all about, is the development of a central database nationwide that will allow us to know about these sorts of activities. I did include in my testimony a chart that shows the general increase in, based on a private study that was done across the country. And yeah, there's been a lot more of it since the pandemic. People, for some reason, we were in our houses and we were closed off from the world, and then we decided to come out of our cocoon and do things we might not have done prior to the pandemic occurring. And so we've seen an increase in this activity. You have supporting written legislation from such agencies in Kansas as the Topeka Transit. This is a top priority for them. Topeka Metro, I apologize. It was intra-city transit when I worked for it 50 years ago when I was in law school doing their PR work. So I've been associated with public transit for quite a long time. And many of you may not actually have, and I wanted to give you, before I jumped right into the necessity of the bill, a little bit of background. We have three types of transit providers in Kansas, and it's not just the buses that you see running along the streets of Topeka, Kansas. This applies to the folks who are transporting grandma to dialysis. This applies to the folks that provide assistance for persons who have other disabilities, mental or physical disabilities. In Wichita, we have Starkey, for example, and we have other systems that are out there. So we have about 140 of those systems all across the state. These systems are funded in large measure, in part by the state of Kansas, in large measure by the federal government, and then through fare box revenues, and by cities and counties as well. And I believe there's a representative of the cities to present to you here today also. Our goal is to provide us with a message to the general public, and I anticipate quite candidly that we will post something on the outside of the vehicles as you're entering into it about the potential for what happens if you create an assault on a driver. And we've done things. We've been training people on how to deal with these things with the public. We have in some vehicles, we now have, as a result of the pandemic, plastic screens between the driver and the passenger. And in larger systems where they've been able to get grants and afford it, we even have cameras in the vehicles to keep recording the activity that's going on. But I've got systems in this state that literally have used bake sales to raise money to operate, so they can't afford cameras inside their buses. So we are, quite candidly, if I haven't sounded desperate enough yet, and I am a lawyer. I should be able to plead desperately. We ask that you give this serious consideration and move it forward. Um, uh, Maybe someday one law will cover everybody and it won't be a problem. But when you find specific circumstances that need addressing, that's why we come back here and ask you to implement specific laws such as this, firefight, law enforcement, healthcare workers, and the like. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I want to thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to have a hearing on this bill.
Committee questions for Tuck. Representative Bryce.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your testimony. I think you did a great job. Just a quick couple.
Will you say that again so I can copy it off of the YouTube and send it out to my folks? You know,
I asked my words be spread across the journal. No. You said current law is not working, and I'm not trying to be antagonistic, but the problem is enforcement. We do have a law in the books, and if we would enforce it, it would be working. And I'm not sure having another law that maybe won't be enforced would be an advantage. And the second is you need a message to the general public. I don't see why we can't have a message to the general public with the current assault laws, put that on the buses and so forth. So if you could address that, thank you.
If the legislature were to pass, it's like with the healthcare. What does it do? It raises the consciousness of the prosecutor. If I have a law here that says don't mess with public transit employees and someone messes with them, I can then go down to the county attorney's office and say, Mr. County Attorney or District Attorney, here is a law. The legislature found it important enough to protect these people who are dealing with the public on a daily basis. And we now have this situation and I need you to prosecute. So it gives me something more than just walking in and saying, oh, I have a routine, simple assault. They see those every day. Not necessarily, you know. And the other thing is, it also would assist with regard to meeting burdens of proof, I think, in terms of being able to, because of the specific language in here that is directed at the types of activities that occur with respect to these public transit personages. You know, at what point in time does spitting on a person in the street become a crime if you don't? I mean, you know. It's all on intent, mens rea. What is scientia? What is all of that? All those good legal terms I learned a long time ago and don't really remember what they mean. But when does that? But here, it's no question. This is a defined activity that constitutes that assault, and I can go to the prosecutor and say, "I need you to go after these people and send a message. We're not going to tolerate this in this community."
Representative Sanders.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was interested in hearing you say you tried to tack on to the bill last year. I've in the past advocated for a bill that would protect sports officials such as umpires and referees.
I tried to add it to that one too, but
Okay.
your bill didn't get out.
All right. Well, would you be interested in adding that to your bill?
Do I object to you? Hey, it's, you know, I learned a long time ago. I've been doing this since 1979. There's only one rule around this place: 63, 21, and 1. Don't forget the 1. There's 63 votes here and 21 votes in the Senate and a governor's signature. That's not for me to say. I know last year the sponsor of the health bill, I think he holds the office in the back of the chamber, didn't want anything else on that bill because he wanted just the health portion to work its way through, and so that's why we begged off of in trying to do that. So that's the will of this, folks. That's your public policy. If you got enough votes to do it, I'm all for you. But so.
You knew I had to ask. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I did want to answer your other question. I don't think this creates a protected class. Protected class relates to certain other things such as age discrimination or race discrimination or certain other areas of that. So this is not a protected class.
Okay. That's good to know. Thank you.
Representative Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Tuck. Question. As far as public transit employees, does that cover parking attendants or city tow trucks or?
No.
Okay.
There's a definition of what constitutes a transportation service that's referenced in here, and I would say not. I do not know the answer about school bus employees. I can try to find out. I don't know. I'd have to go back to that.
That was going to be my next one. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. And the reason I don't know is some of them work solely for private companies that provide, yellow buses up and down the streets in the cities. Others are not working for a transportation system. They're working for the school district, and therefore, whether they would qualify or not, I don't know. So,
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Resman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Would this also cover private transportation workers?
I didn't hear you.
Would this bill also cover private transportation workers?
Oh, yeah. Yes. In fact, in the state of Kansas, not all public transportation persons work for some form of government. We have a number that are private systems. Sunflower Diversified out of Barton County you call that private. They're going to get some government funds. But then on the other hand, Finney County Transit out in Garden City is a county operation. In Topeka Metro is a separate independent agency. But in Wichita Transit is part and parcel of the city government. And then, but then you have Starkey and Hearthstone and a whole variety of Cappers, a whole variety of private 501Cs that provide transportation services for their various clienteles.
Would it cover somebody it was an Uber driver also?
I don't think an Uber driver would be covered. First off, they're an independent contractor. Secondly, you have a separate definition of whatever the heck that definition is. We passed a few years ago to allow Uber people be independent contractors and provide their own insurance and certain other things. So I'm trying to think of that special term. It's like 3 long words and quotes in the legislative statute. So no, I do not believe it would cover Uber or Lyft or the like.
Representative Hoy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I did look up in the definition KSA 75-5034. So
thank you. I couldn't find it on my
transportation
phone.
transportation system means all public and private transportation providers which provide public transportation services to elderly persons with disabilities, and the general public which receive federal support. And it lists the code that does. And then it says transportation means the movement of individuals and meals in a 4 or more wheeled motorized vehicle designed to carry passengers. Transportation does not include emergency or school transportation.
Oh, okay.
Representative Blue.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Tuck, I'm going to go back to my brick analogy. So
I'm used to having bricks thrown at me. Not a problem.
I figured.
I've been here a long time.
So my question is, say that I have 2 scenario. So say that I am loading the Sunflower Diversified bus in Barton County. As I'm loading, I throw a brick at the driver. Vehicles in park. That's one option, hypothetical option. The second option is while they're driving, a brick is thrown at them. Are there 2 different levels? Like, I mean, at that point, it's I hate to say this, but it's more dangerous while you're driving because you can affect other people on the road. You have passengers. So is there different levels of?
No, we don't distinguish in terms of what activity they're doing at the moment when they are being assaulted. With regard to the throwing of the brick at the person while they're stationary, if it's still that public transportation employee, but under today's law, the nature of the penalty is less. The other factor is, I don't know if that's your first offense, second offense, third offense. And so that's why this particular statute talks about not only the misdemeanor level, but the aggravated level, and also the severity level of the crime relates to the chart and where you are on it relative to if you've done nothing, you're probably, as he said, going to get probation. But if you're a bad actor who's got a rap sheet, you're probably going to find yourself in the Hooskow.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
They still have Hooskows out in your part of the state, don't they?
It's unfortunate that this bill is even needed. So thank you.
I grew up in Chicago, It was nothing for I grew up in North Shore. It would be nothing for me to get on an elevated train in Wilmette, Illinois, and go to downtown Chicago back in the 60s, and I would not be at risk. But if I was living in Wilmette, Illinois today, and in Topeka, Kansas, I mean, it would be, I mean, I took the bus every day to law school here in Topeka, and I never felt any. But today, you have to wonder. I would not put my child on certain forms of transit anymore because of the nature of what's happened. You're right. It's a damn shame. But life has changed in the 70 plus years that I've been living. And unfortunately, I find myself on behalf of these transit systems and my board, which is comprised of a broad base, having to come and plead to you to try to get something implemented that would protect this particular group of people. And they, you know, during the pandemic, they were out there every day still transporting. During the pandemic, they were out there in certain parts of this state not providing transportation services. They were picking up food and delivering it to people who needed the Meals on Wheels or prescription drugs. These transit agencies around this state perform a lot more services than just getting people from point A to point B. And when they are the small cutaways and the person's in the wheelchair, they're taking them from the vehicle up to the front door. They're getting them into their house. I mean, these folks are deeply engaged in the lives of folks who are transit dependent. They're not like you and I who can go out to the parking lot and get in their car and go someplace. And so we ask these people to be out there in the field every day. And we simply need a little more protection, just as the healthcare workers have asked, such as the law enforcement has received, and the like over these past decades. And I didn't mean to filibuster, but thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
I was wondering when you were going to end. Representative Howell.
You have the gavel. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Chair. So, well, now if I can remember my question. Sorry about that. Has public transit had any discussions with any of the DAs in the state to find out if they believe that this would help them be able to address the problem?
No, I have not had conversations with the respective district attorneys. I did talk to the law enforcement lobbyist, and he indicated they had no objection to this. He didn't know whether they would testify, but he told me. I said, well, then just stay out of the room. You know, don't oppose it. No, and I can tell you, Wichita would like to see this implemented. Wichita Transit is a supporter of this.
Mike has some information for us.
The current battery statute has 12 different groups that are cut out, including healthcare. If transportation employees were plugged in as number 13, would that cover what you want as well?
Probably. I didn't do that because you wrote such a nice, how often around here do we have a one-page bill? I mean, you know, simplicity in its essence, one page. I thought this would be great. It might even get on the consent calendar, you know, or whatever.
Committee, further questions? Good. Thank you. Thank you, Tuck.
Mr. Joe.
Next, we have Sage, and I'm not even going to try to, could you tell us how your last name is?
Yes, that's Sage Pormirza. I'm a staff attorney with the League of Kansas Municipalities. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to be here. I'm here today to testify in support of House Bill 2808. As cities, our members do employ a significant chunk of public transit employees. I don't have the specific data on that, but you know, they are an important part of our city system. And as public transit employees, they do deal with members of the public more often than several other people involved in city government and things like that. You know, they're on a similar level, if not higher than, you know, medical workers with how much they deal with the public on a daily basis, you know, constantly offering their transit support. So with that, we do feel it's important to enshrine them into law with this added protection. And, you know, as was mentioned earlier, you know, they could be protected under other laws, but at this point, they're not being protected in such a way. And so this gives an extra means for the district attorneys to, sort of enforce that action, because it's not really an issue with law enforcement, enforcing this, but when it gets to the district attorney, when it gets to the district attorney's office, it, tends to fall into the pile of issues that they're already dealing with. And so adding this extra protection gives them, that opportunity to specifically address the public transit issue.
Committee questions? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, we have Desiree Bush by WebEx. Desiree, are you there?
Yes. Good morning. Can you hear me?
Very good.
Right. Good morning, everyone. My name is Desiree Bush, and I am the Director of the Transportation Department for the Unified Government of Wyandotte County, Kansas City, Kansas. And today I am here to express our support for House Bill 2808. The Unified Government Transportation Department, we have implemented a ridership code of conduct policy in response to mounting safety concerns regarding our transit operators. The policy strives to preserve the health, safety, and welfare of our transit passengers and drivers, as well as the equipment and facilities utilized to offer public transportation services and ensure civility and desirability. Our ridership code of conduct applies to all passengers, whether they're riding, departing, entering, or waiting for a bus at a specific transit stop. Violators of this policy can face up to a 1-year suspension of services. Nevertheless, this is still insignificant because the violator can use alternative modes of transportation, including transit services in other jurisdictions. House Bill 2808 is crucial for public transportation staff, our transit operators, and in general, our operations. Our ridership code of conduct policy is significant to safeguard the safety of our employees. There has definitely been an increase in abuse and harassment directed at our transit operators. While unarmed safety guards may help alleviate the problem, House Bill 2808 guarantees that individuals who break the law are held accountable for their actions. Our bus operators face verbal abuse and physical violence. I will tell you firsthand one situation last year. We had a person load the bus. They had an argument with another passenger. This lady pulled out a knife, slashed all the seats on our bus, and threatened the operator with the knife. So the operator calmly talked to her about getting off the bus and threatened to call 911. However, the passenger became even more combative after the operator stated they were going to call emergency. Fortunately, our transit operator was not injured in this event, but if you can only imagine, drivers are enduring this type of verbal and violence. It may be challenging to give accurate data since many of our operators do not report the smaller occurrences, such as profanity. However, in instances involving more serious and dangerous kinds of assaults, such as being attacked or threatened with a weapon or physically assaulted, those sort of occurrences are reported. The frequency of these crimes have a negative impact on public transportation, which makes it unsafe for other passengers. So today, I am truly asking for your support in the passage of House Bill 2808, as it would improve the protection of passengers and transit operators who depend upon our services. So thank you for the opportunity in expressing our support today.
Very good. Let's see if there's some questions. Committee questions? Very good. Seeing none. Thank you for being here. Okay, committee, I'll bring your attention to written proponents, Robert, Andy, and Frank. And so with that, we will close the hearing on House Bill 2808, and we will open the hearing on Senate Bill 434. Mike will give us a little overview on this. I think we're going to learn something today.
Mike Hyman, the Reviser of Statutes Office. This bill is a bill that would amend the practice of hair removal by sugaring from the definition of cosmetology. The bill would define sugaring and require the addition of infection control techniques for sugaring to an existing KDHE brochure and require the individual engaged in sugaring to complete and keep the self-test portion of the infection control brochure at the location where the individual is sugaring. When I read this bill to prepare for the committee meeting, it was the first time I heard of sugaring, so I'm probably not the best person to answer questions about this. I do know that my wife goes and has her eyebrows or whatever. There's other techniques besides sugaring to remove hair, but anyway.
Thank you for that, Mike. Awkward.
Threading was what I was trying to remember.
There you go. Committee, any questions or Representative Hoy?
Thank you. I just want to clarify because I see this in the opposition testimony as well as when I look at the current infection control regulations. Waxing and sugar paste, or wax and sugar paste, are both currently regulated the same way. And if we pass this bill, wax and sugar paste would be treated differently. Is that correct?
I believe that's correct. You've got conferees that will get into the details.
Committee, further questions? Representative Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mike. Are you familiar, I'm sorry, let me start over. Currently, is threading or tweezing also under the Board of Cosmetology regulations for hair removal?
I believe they are. I made the mistake of not bringing a copy of the bill. It's on my computer, but anyway, I think that this is a cutout for sugaring.
Okay, so to clarify, then on the bill, it does reference using tweezers as allowed during the sugar paste process. Will this be allowing tweezing as a service that can be provided by somebody who is not licensed with the Board of Cosmetology?
I really think somebody that deals with this should answer the questions. Like I said, this is brand new.
Thanks, Mike.
And Mike, at our age, we don't get too many brand new things, so just
That's
remember
true.
that. Committee, further questions? Very good. Thank you, Mike. First proponent we have is Sam McRoberts, Kansas Justice Institute. Yes. Welcome to committee, Representative.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Barb Wassinger, representative for the 111th District. By the way, hair threading was exempted from the Board of Cosmetology a year or two ago because they don't teach it in cosmetology, or had not been teaching it, and it's been exempted. So legally, no. Bryn Green is a resident of Hayes in Ellis County, Kansas, and is my constituent. She is a young child, newly married, and would like to have a business, but the Board of Cosmetology is stopping her because they believe she should go to cosmetology school and spend anywhere from $16,000 to $20,000 and over a year of her time to learn how to do something she already knows how to do. Sugaring is an ancient practice from Egypt. It is all natural. It does not have any problems with it. It is less irritating than wax. It is much more comfortable for people, and there are less issues with people having sensitivities. Cosmetologists have anywhere from 1,000 to 1,500 hours of training. So they're wanting her to go and learn how to do perms, cut hair, perm hair, all these things. when that's not what she wants to do. She simply wants to be able to work as in a sugaring business of her own so she can make money for her family and work it around taking care of her child. This is an occupational licensing issue. This is an economic issue. This is keeping someone from working in a position that they can do that has relatively maybe 0.02% of any kind of training anywhere else. Let me explain to you how I feel about the Board of Cosmetology. I've kind of had a problem with them since I came into the office 6 years ago. I've been on joint administrative rules and regulations, and the Board of Cosmetology came to us and said, we believe there should be 2 sinks in every salon, a hair sink and a work sink. I thought, well, that makes sense. I guess they think that's, oh, okay. What I didn't realize, even though we couldn't have stopped it, is that very next year driving to and from work in Topeka, coming to Topeka and Hayes, every home salon had closed. Every home salon in the city of Hayes had closed. You want to know why? Because the Board of Cosmetology shut them down because they only had 1 sink. 1 chair, 1 sink, all these little ladies coming for perms, they all shut down because they couldn't afford to do that. All right, doesn't seem like that much. Then they come back and tell us they want to make sure that every assisted living, every hospital, every nursing home has to have a licensed cosmetologist in it in order to have a salon. Ooh, that's a problem for me because my mom was in assisted living. And by the way, our colleague, Representative Carmichael's mother had just finally, after 3 years of COVID, got her hair cut and colored because she couldn't get it done. You couldn't do it. You can't do it. If they add all of those, you can't do it. And I said, why do you want to do it? Because we need to be inspecting them. And I said, so KDHE doesn't do a very good job. KDADS doesn't do a very good job. And you think you need another organization to check and license you. And I said, how much money do you have in your unencumbered funds? And I said, we have about $1 million.
Representative, can we get back to the bill,
Sorry.
please?
Yes.
I understand about cosmetology and all that, but can we get back on the sugaring bill?
I'm sorry. The problem is that this woman needs to have a job. She wants to do sugaring, and the Board of Cosmetology is saying no. We exempt things from the Board of Cosmetology all the time, and honestly, we should exempt more. And I ask that you allow this to be exempted as well. I'll stand for questions when required.
Very good. Committee questions? Representative Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative
Thank you,
Watson,
Representative
we have
Watson.
a question.
I do have a question for you real quick. A couple questions, actually, if you don't mind. I'll keep it short.
I'll stay on topic.
Okay, cool. I will too. So you mentioned that they, to your knowledge, they don't teach threading in cosmetology schools, right?
I've been told it's probably less than 2% or less than that.
Right, as part of the overall curriculum at the cosmetology school. I guess I should preface by saying that I've been a licensed cosmetology educator for 15 years. I have worked in multiple school settings. The 1,000-hour program you were referencing was aesthetics.
Right.
They all still specifically pertain to infection control and public safety.
Okay.
So you mentioned there was one of the reasons for wanting to exempt sugaring from the Board of Cosmetology's regulation was that it was something that she already knew how to do. And my question to you is, would you be able to color your own hair if you wanted to, or would you be able to apply this wax to your face on your own? Are you familiar with how to do that?
Sure.
So knowing how to do that, do you feel comfortable doing it on someone else?
I have done it on other people. Please don't arrest me.
Yeah, me too. And so there's a little gray area there with the Board of Cosmetology, the way that they require inspections of facilities when services are being provided for business or profit. So as a licensed hairdresser, I can go and cut my mom's hair for free. I don't charge her anything. I would not be breaking any laws by going to her house and cutting that because I'm not charging her money for it. And there's no reason to inspect those facilities. So with potentially taking sugaring from the purview of the Board of Cosmetology, do you, I guess I didn't write that part of the question down. And so you said that they, oh my gosh. Let me just backtrack a little bit. By taking the sugaring off of the list of cosmetology required services, do you see any potential public safety issues with somebody who maybe didn't read the brochure or is not familiar with how hot it needs to be in order to get the correct consistency of a sugar, lemon, and water? The issues with reusing product from one person to the next, or are you familiar with any of those regulations that the Board of Cosmetology requires?
I don't think there are going to be any more problems than there is with hair threading, hair threaders. So, and there's a law that allows occupational licensing to go through the state. So,
I guess that's all I have for you right now.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Good morning. I am Sam McRoberts. I'm litigation director at Kansas Justice Institute. I represent Bryn Green. We currently have a lawsuit against the state of Kansas and the Kansas Board of Cosmetology over this very occupational licensing regime involving sugaring. Representative Wassinger laid out in general the issue in this case and the reason we're here in front of the legislature today. In Kansas, in order to perform sugaring, you would have to go to at least 1,000 hours of esthetician school or 1,500 hours of cosmetology school. Ms. Green lives in Hayes. There is no esthetician school, so she would be required to attend cosmetology school. Based upon the Board of Cosmetology documents and the Board of Cosmetology's own approved textbooks, less than about 0.002% of the curriculum of cosmetology school is devoted to sugaring. That's if sugaring is being taught for the full 2.27 hours, which we don't think is happening. We think it's unlikely. The cosmetology textbooks are more than 1,000 pages. Sugaring is mentioned in 3 paragraphs. One of those paragraphs is only 1 sentence long. And in the book, it actually, instead of teaches a person how to sugar, says you should learn how to sugar by going online or going to trade programs. So from our perspective, it's fundamentally unfair and unconstitutional to require somebody like Bryn Green to spend 1,500 hours of her life spending close to $18,000 to learn something that has nothing to do with sugaring and that she already knows how to do. Ms. Green took an online class on how to sugar. If sugaring was dangerous, perhaps this conversation would be different. But according to the cosmetology textbooks, this isn't my word, it's from the textbooks themselves, sugaring is already safe. Sugaring is lemon juice, water, and sugar. It's mixed together into a paste. Representative Wassinger is correct. You can use it on skin with psoriasis, eczema, spider veins. It has natural antiseptic properties. It's virtually risk-free. And so there's no constitutional or sufficient reason to force someone to go through this schooling just to be able to perform sugaring. We think, and we are litigating this issue. We are in the midst of this litigation. We think that this is a good solution to a terribly unjust occupational licensing regime. We're not here to devalue anyone's license. We're not here to send messages to the Board of Cosmetology or the proponent or the opponents that are here today. What we are seeking is rationality when it comes to earning an honest living in Kansas. So I'm happy to stand for questions. I can also talk about the difference between waxing and sugaring. I can talk about threading. I can talk about tweezers. As you can imagine, when you read the cosmetology textbooks like I have a fairly decent idea. So I'm happy to answer any questions, especially I think one of them was about tweezing. I can discuss that as well.
Very good. Committee questions. Representative Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would actually like to hear what you have to say about the tweezing aspect of it. The one word on there on page 3, line 5, it says tweezers or scissors, and I can understand scissors for trimming and stuff, but the tweezing part of it would.
Yeah, I think the point is it's supposed to be incidental to sugaring. So if there is like a stray hair, you could then use a tweezer to do it. But if it were the predominant purpose, if you're really just tweezing instead of sugaring, then that would be a problem.
Okay. One more, if I may. So which parts of the body would be allowed to be sugared according to this bill?
It would be exempted. So it could be basically anywhere in the body as long as you were following the safety guidelines based upon the brochure.
Okay. So let's just use a bikini or Brazilian wax, for example.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, sure. So there are a handful of issues with doing any kind of hair removal services in a sensitive area like the genital area. So would the brochure be, would it have a robust explanation of which parts of the body should and should not be have this sugar paste applied to it, especially in a condition where if they're on their period or pregnant, or if they have genital piercings to work around sunburn, if they're on any medications like antibiotics, Accutane, things like that? Is it going to address any of those things?
So I think the reason I improperly interrupted you was that there is a fundamental difference between waxing and sugaring. And so there are different concerns for waxing, given the temperature of the wax and the way that the procedure is done. There's hard wax, there's soft wax. Sugaring, though, is fundamentally different from waxing. So the concerns attendant to waxing are not the same for sugaring. I think if the Department of Health wants to put those in the brochure, they should do that. And backing up, the only thing you really need to know how to do sugaring safely is to wash your hands. And if you wash your hands and you are clear about washing your hands, then you're going to perform sugaring safely. So I think those concerns that you raise, put them in the brochure. No problem with that whatsoever.
Will it also say single use to not reuse the product?
Yeah, that's fine too, because I think most people would never reuse a sugar on another person.
You would be surprised.
Sure. And so I think if that is something the Department of Health wanted to put in there, they should certainly say, do not reuse sugaring paste on another individual.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Epley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And this will be a quick question. I assure you I'm not a victim of sugaring or waxing, but just want to know of the amount of hair removal, waxing still going to be covered by the Board of Cosmetology?
That's correct.
And of all hair removal, how much is sugaring versus waxing?
So my focus has been on sugaring, not waxing. I cannot tell you how many hours are devoted to sugaring, but I can say anecdotally, after going through the cosmetology textbooks, there's much more space and time and attention devoted to waxing than sugaring, because sugaring, in our view, is not being taught, and either in the textbooks or in schools.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Committee, further questions? Representative Haskins.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And with Ms. Green's lawsuit, how much financially is she out? Why is there this going to court?
I don't know. I don't understand the question. How much she's out?
Well, the previous testifiers stated that it was an economic impact,
Oh, I see.
and so I'm imagining that there is some sort of justification for this, and so that's what I'm asking is how much money is she out?
I got it. We are a pro bono law firm. We do cases for free, so we don't charge our clients any money. We're not charging her any money to do this case. I believe Representative Wassinger mentioned that this is an economic liberties case. That's what I took what she said to mean. In Kansas, we have the Life, Liberty, and Pursuit of Happiness clause. That clause was patterned after the Declaration of Independence and Thomas Jefferson. The right to earn an honest living free from unreasonable government interference has been well established since the Magna Carta. We've traced that right from the Magna Carta to the Declaration of Independence, to the Kansas founders, and to case law through Kansas. So you do have this constitutional right to earn an honest living, to be free from unreasonable government regulations. That's the economic liberty that's issue in this case.
Okay, and thank you very much. And I apologize. This darn Kansas allergy is creating more of a brain fog. But I never get to talk about sugaring, so might as well ask a question here. And I appreciate your answer. I was more specific. How much does Miss Green lose by not going personally? I'm assuming she charges for the sugaring technique, and how much is she out of pocket personally for her business?
She can't do sugaring.
Okay.
So she's not earning a living through sugaring right now. She would have been out about $18,200 for the cosmetology school, in addition to whatever income she would have been making during school. But the price of sugaring, if that's also what you're getting to, I don't have a great feel for that. It's probably about $15 a session if threading is if it's a good indication, but I don't have the exact amount for that yet.
Thank you. And my last question is because you said it twice about an unjust regime. And is this just a secondary argument against the Kansas cosmetology licensing system and process? I don't understand why those words were used, and how can you justify the statements?
So it is an unjust occupational licensing regime when you require, this is our view, when you require somebody to spend $18,000 a year of their life, 1,500 hours of learning irrelevant things, taking irrelevant courses to learn something that is already safe and something that our client already knows how to do. The examination process in our reading does not test sugaring at every single examination. It doesn't require somebody to know how to competently perform sugaring. So you could spend 1,500 hours a year of your life, tens of thousands of dollars, and not be any better off of learning how to perform sugaring. In our view, that is terribly unjust. It's unconstitutional under the Life, Liberty, and Pursuit of Happiness Clause, under Section 18 of the Kansas Constitution, and Section 20 of the Kansas Constitution. It also violates equal protection because right now it is perfectly safe to perform sugaring for free, but it's illegal to do it for money. Well, if it's safe enough to do for free, it should be safe enough to do for money. So for all of those reasons, that's why we think this is unjust and unconstitutional. But having said all of that, we think that this is a good solution to what we perceive to be a significant problem.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Very good. Thank you for that. Committee, further questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. Committee, I'll bring your attention to written proponent Wendy Doyle. Now we have opponents. The first opponent is Nicole Hines. Nicole, welcome to committee.
Thank you so much for having me. So first I will introduce myself. I'm Nicole Hines. I'm the owner of Bellabar Aesthetics in Kansas City as well as in Leawood. I have 2 locations. I teach business classes on to small businesses about how to run their salons more efficiently. I also have salon suites, so I rent out spaces to other estheticians and massage therapists at my Leawood location. I've been a licensed esthetician and cosmetologist for 30 years this year. And so I'm the person you can ask all the questions about sugaring. And I even brought you a present. I brought you cold sugaring. So let's see. I am obviously an opponent to this bill. And I want to start by saying that the reason why sugaring is not so focused on in school is because it is a specialty. It is something you learn after you learn the basics. It's not something that would necessarily be other than breezed over so that students would know it exists. And it's something that you could look into when you get out of school. So like I said, I've been licensed for 30 years. I've only been sugaring for 10 because it took me 20 years to get up the guts to even try to figure out how to remove hair with this. Now, as I've said, I brought an example of cold sugaring, There's also warm sugaring. There's actually 3 techniques. With this, I would take gloves, actually 3 gloves. I have 2 here, and it's about sanitation and sterilization to prep the client's skin and then go in with 2 gloves and then get a 3rd glove to actually go in the jar so I don't contaminate all of the product, because I can get quite a few out of this jar and in order to perform the service. Now, let me say, in everything I'm going to share with you and my concerns for why I'm here is mainly about Brazilians and Manzilians. The main reason, the most popular reason that people have temporary hair removal, although you can use this on all parts of the body, it is for the human genitalia. I spend most of my days removing hair from the part of the body that people have to take off their clothes in order to have the hair removed. So you have cold sugaring, you have warm sugaring that you also dip your hand in and get in the same way you use this, but with a different technique of the way you hold your hand. And then there is a 3rd way where you actually warm up the sugar like wax. So everything that you think about or know about wax, the same applies to sugaring, depending upon how the person rendering the service wants to use the sugar. So everything you think about wax, think of it running concurrently, the same with sugar if the person is choosing to use sticks and remove hair that way. The other reason why this is an advanced service, not to get too deep in it, is because when you are waxing, you are paying attention to the hair growing one way. When you're using this, and I go back and forth all day long, my brain is going completely the opposite direction in how I need to take care of the client. If you do not do this properly, not only is there the chance for infection, there is also the chance for cysts and ingrown hairs. Actually, ingrown hairs, because the hairs will break no matter what 3 of the techniques you're using. Hairs will break, and then there's infection, and then there's a cyst, and then there's removal of cysts from the genitalia by a doctor. So this is very serious. If you do not use the sugar or wax in the proper way, there is the ripping of the skin. Again, to go into it a little bit, the skin on the lips and the skin on the genitalia is very similar. It is much thinner than the skin on the face or on other parts of the body. If you do not know how to use this product properly, whether cold sugaring or warm sugaring with a stick, you will rip the skin, therefore causing the person to have to truly pay attention so that they can make sure they do not get an infection of some sort. You can also burn the skin. There have actually also been cases that I've heard of from people telling me the bad experiences that they've had. You can rip the genitalia. You can actually rip it off. I'm not going to go into more detail than that. And you will end up in the emergency room needing emergency surgery where your body has been ripped off. And I don't think I need to go any more specific than that. My next concern are felony screenings. Again, Brazilians is the main thing that we do with this. This means people are taking their clothes off all day long for me, all day. I am an expert because the average Brazilian takes anywhere from 30 minutes to 45 minutes to an hour, takes me 10. I do a 10-minute Brazilian all day long, 30 years. I do a 10-minute Brazilian with either sugaring or waxing. The felony screenings, we as licensed are screened for felonies every year or every 2 years when we have to re-up our license. The question specifically asks, have you been convicted of a felony? And we have to answer that question yes or no. I don't know the behind the scenes, what happens in order if you say yes or if you say no, or if there's random screening. But my concern with this is we are opening up by allowing Brazilians, which will be the primary purpose. This young woman who is wanting to be allowed to do sugaring, I guarantee you she's not wanting to sugar fingers, remove hair off of fingers or lips on someone's face. She's wanting to do Brazilians. Okay, so what we are opening up to is convicted felons being allowed to touch people that they should not be touching, and that is a fact. So please, as you think about these different things, think about that, because convicted felons will not be screened and will be touching people in their genitalia. Contamination, sanitation, and sterilization. It's a primary function in school. So in school, let me reiterate, what we're mostly learning in school is to learn how to protect the public. Once we get out of the classroom after X hours and we get on the floor, it's not about the skill. The skills do not come for 3 to 4 to 5 years after you're out in the real world. The same as when we earn a bachelor's degree. When I earned my bachelor's degree, that gave me the basics. It's when you get out into the world and you get into whatever career you're doing. In this case, we're talking about sugaring. That would be a master's degree, a postgraduate degree to learn how to work on that level. But again, in school, we're focusing most of the time on sanitation. If you drop a comb, you put it in barbicide. If you need more sugar, you can't dip back into this jar. You have to get a new one. That is the thing that school, I want to just drive home so much, is what's really going on in school is making sure that the workers, the practitioners can protect the public when they get out into the real world. That repetition, that muscle memory of how do I do things to keep people safe at all times. No inspections. We already have the threading deregulated. We have the braiding deregulated. I will not waste your time on the mortification I had in going to a salon that I did not know was unregulated for braiding and seeing all the things as a 30-year licensed person that were going on that should not be going on. I'll just stop with using the same comb on client after client. No barbicide, no shampoo bowls. It's scary. That's what's going on with braiding. I don't know what's going on with threading since it's been deregulated, but I would imagine some of the same. I spend a lot of time educating my clients and the public on what they need to be looking for when they go into somewhere now in the state of Kansas when they're being threaded, because there's a lot of things that they need to be making sure are going on to keep them safe. It will be the same with the sugaring. But with no inspections.
Nicole, can you kind of wrap it up? We have
Yes,
three more
absolutely,
folks
absolutely.
here.
So here are my concerns. I've highlighted and you can see them in my written testimony. Blood spill protocol, seen or unseen, when we are removing the hair from the hair follicle, there is blood. Whether we can see it or not, that needs to be taken into consideration at all times when it comes to sugaring, waxing, what have you, and making sure that disposal of everything that we remove from someone's body is handled properly, and also knowing how to handle if you do have a rip, if someone is profusely bleeding, which does happen. The education, the going to school, the getting the license is where that comes in to make sure that the public is safe. Taxes, that's another concern. If we're going to have people who are allowed to perform this service unlicensed, that's a cash only business. I've been here for 30 years. I'm here to tell you. So do they not have to pay the taxes like me and everyone else that's licensed, or all of you in this room that have to pay taxes? That's what we're opening up to. Loss of revenue for the state of Kansas. Missouri is now cracking down and regulating more. I'm licensed in both states. I'm a licensed tattooist in Missouri. I'm happy to report that Missouri now requires a licensing for brow tattooing. I hear, I don't want to lie to you, but I think lashes is coming up in Missouri next, to regulate lashes in Missouri. So what I want you to think about in this great state of Kansas, my home state, especially in the greater Kansas City area, losing revenue in the state of Kansas for consumers as they become more and more aware, especially with social media, finding out what's going on in the state, we will lose revenue. And that is one of the reasons why I have studios in both states, to protect myself and be able to render the services that I want, depending upon what's going on in one state or the other. My request for you, Mr. Chairman, if you go forward with this and deregulating sugaring, which again, think of it congruent with waxing, warm, dipping, all the dangers of waxing and sugaring being exactly the same. Sugaring is not just sugar and water and lemon juice. You can hurt someone with anything. You can poke somebody in the eye with a toothpick and blind them, right? We think it seems like something harmless. It doesn't have to be a dangerous weapon in order to hurt someone. This is dangerous if you do not know what you're doing, an advanced specialty service. I would like to ask that KDHE have guidelines that must be followed by unlicensed. I don't know how you get that information to someone who is unlicensed. I don't know. If they think they don't have to have a license, I don't know why they think they have to follow anything. But that's my one request. And also what some states do that have unlicensed modalities and services, they make the unlicensed post a sign somewhere that informs the public that they are unlicensed. And I beg of you to at least require that, so that the consumers can be educated and understand where they are going and what they're going to experience, so they don't have the experience I had going to an unlicensed braiding salon. Thank you.
Thank you for wrapping it up in about the last 5 minutes. But anyway, committee questions very quickly. We have 3 more conferees. Representative Hass.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And on the point of hygiene, let's say it, people do not have the best hygiene when they're getting Brazilians. There's a lot of fecal matter of what I'm hearing. So there's a lot of hygiene concerns in my point of view. Thank you.
Thank you. That is a fact, yes.
Thank you very much for being here. Next, we have Michelle. Michelle, I'm going to ask you to be a little brief because we have more folks. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Michelle Legg, and I live in Olathe. I've been a licensed cosmetologist for 31 years. I've been a licensed educator for 16 years. So I can talk more about the education side of things. Most people, when they think of cosmetology, they think, oh, it's just beauty school. You think of Greece and beauty school dropout and all that. They don't realize what we go through. We get into science, chemistry. They have to learn why we do what we do and parts of the body and how we can make sure we're not hurting someone. And this is something that starts from day one. The primary thing, it is a foundation. That's where we start with everything. And safety and sanitation, it starts from day one. How do you take care of everything? And it's fluid. It goes through all of the modalities on how to make sure you're disinfecting products, if you're using single-use products, how to make sure that you are keeping yourself and your guests safe. Go through all my little notes here. One thing that I'd like to address also is it was mentioned that we don't teach sugaring in there. We do go over it. We've already gone over it. It is an advanced technique. But I also want to touch on the fact that safety and sanitation is fluid through everything. There's required hours. It's 40 hours, I believe. It's in there. And 40% of the state law tests that you have to take before you can license is about safety and sanitation. So that is tested. That is something that we take very seriously. Notes that I want to say, the other safety issues we have, people talk about tweezing. Any time you take and you pull a hair out of a follicle, there's micro tears that happen. That's, as Nicole alluded, there's blood that shows up, there's body fluid that shows up. That's how STDs are spread. That's how other infection is spread. And if you aren't disinfecting and making sure everything is there, you're spreading that throughout everyone else that touches that table, that you use those shears on, you use those tweezers on, you're spreading that. So it's not about just, oh, I can just do this or that. It needs to be disinfected. You have to protect the public. The public expects us to protect them. They expect that we're licensed. They don't ever walk in a place and expect that someone's not licensed. They don't expect that they're going to walk into a salon and it hasn't been inspected. That's what the standard is because they expect the state to protect them. I touch a little bit on, Nicole alluded to the felony exam. If you're convicted of a felony, I've had students that have tried to go to school, tried to do that, but because of their past, they weren't able to because they were a convicted felon. And the state felt that they had not rehabilitated themselves enough that the public could be trusted with them. And that's sad for them, but that is choices that they made. And it's a way that we protect the public. The different products and the supporters of this have said, it's just water and lemon and sugar. It really can't do anything. You're right, it can't. It's how it's used that can hurt someone when it's done improperly. That's where the hurting happens. And saying you don't need anything else other than your hands. What about gloves? Let's go back to the micro tears going on. You can get an STD yourself. You're putting your own health at risk if you're not taking proper sanitation. Trying to look at my notes, it's taking different things. I think that's the gist of it. I think Nicole hit on most of what's going on there, but I can answer any questions.
Very good. Thank you. Committee questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. Next, we have Letitia Martinez. Welcome to committee, Letitia. And again, if you could be brief, we're going to be sitting here by ourselves here in a few minutes. So
Hello, my name is Leticia Martinez. I've been a licensed cosmetologist since 2004 and a licensed esthetician since 2018. I am also a certified sugaring educator. Everything that they said goes along with that. Sugar is a natural product, but the sugar is not what's in question here. It is the practitioner. You can get an online certification anywhere for anything, but it is the hands-on technique that is the specialty. You don't just simply wash your hands, you protect your client, you protect yourself with using a gloved hand, and you remove it each time you dip in. If you are flicking improperly, you will bruise the skin. The sugar can remove a skin tag, and I don't know if you know that skin tag is dead flesh, and when it is ripped off, it bleeds like a wound, like you've been cut, because that's exactly what it is. That technique of sugaring took me over a year, and I have been licensed for 4 years when I tried it. So, and to be certified educator, you have to sugar for a year consistently before they will even look at your application to be an educator. And then to even order sugar from a company, you must be certified. And in order to be certified, you must be licensed. There's no way around it. You know, I've been in this industry for that long, and protecting the public is the number one thing that we are taught. I just, I understand it is a great career, but you have to get your education. It's what's important for the public. Let's see. Along with that, when a client comes in, we have consultation forms and we thoroughly consult. We do skin analysis. We need to know what medications you've been on, if you've been in the sun recently, if you plan to be in the sun. All of the skin analysis falls under the scope of aesthetics. We are taught all that in our courses. I don't know if there's anything else that I can touch on this. Histamine reactions. When sugar is applied to the face, histamine reactions occur. And that is when you get white pustules. And how are you going to be able to recommend products to your clients if you don't have the education in chemistry? That's what I have for so far.
Very good. Thank you very much for that. Committee questions? Seeing none, thank you again for being here.
Thank you.
And lastly, we have Roseanne. Welcome to committee.
Thank you for having me. My name is Rosanna Polina. I've been a licensed cosmetologist for 38 years. I also happen to be co-owner of Mitsusato Hair Academy in Overland Park, Kansas. Everything that the other opponents have said is 100% true. I've been sugar waxing. I'm a sugar waxer. I've been sugar waxing for over 30 years. I do teach it to my students. We sit down and we cook it, and the temperature is 250 to 265 degrees when sugar, water, and lemon juice becomes a waxing product. There is absolutely inconsistency. There's no difference between honey wax and sugar wax. There's no difference. And for me, as someone who's been licensed in the state of Kansas this long, it's really, to me, a tragedy that we would ever put the public at risk of being hurt and harmed for any reason. I do recognize that, everyone's going to not always agree with the state of Kansas or with the Board of Cosmetology. I don't think that someone should have the right to create a bill and shortcut their way through cosmetology or aesthetic school. That's, to me, absolutely wrong. We have students who do pay those fees. They pay that money and they go through the training, and they get that training so that they are able to provide quality services and safe services for clients. And to me, as someone who owns a school and puts up the money financially to own that school and operate that school, and I take it true to heart to my students. If I take the time and I teach them correctly, that they are going to have a job, that they're always going to be providing quality services, and they're going to be able to make a living. And nobody should be able to shortcut that. As far as issues and problems with Kansas State Board of Cosmetology, you know, not everybody likes getting caught with a comb with hair in it. Nobody likes getting caught maybe, oh, they forgot their tweezer on the counter. Hey, that's just part of it. That's all we're required. We're required to press the gas to go. And we also are required to press the brake when we need to stop. So we have rules and regulations throughout the state for different things for a reason. And, you know, it's my hope that you would not pass this, because I do look at the safety. I've been providing safe services for my clients for years. And I just want to thank you for your time, and hopefully this doesn't go through. All right? Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Committee questions? Seeing none, thank you again for being here. Committee, that will wrap up that.